So it's coming up to 6 weeks now since we lost mum and dad, and it's been it's been wild. It's been such a strange time. Mainly, I just feel like there's a real change happening in me. Um, for the better, I think. This whole thing has just it I think it gets you to reflect on the relationship. When you lose someone, it gets you to reflect quite deeply on the relationship and things you may not have previously considered, both the good, the bad, the relationship in its entirety. And there's a lot of things that have come about, things that I'd maybe forgotten about, things that I hadn't quite realized, like the impact it had on me. To give you an example, I've been having counseling sessions now over the past couple of weeks, and they've been fantastic. And amazing lady that I'm working with called Angelina, and she's kind of pointed out a few things which have been really interesting to me, and kind of unpacking them, as um, time has gone on, has been really interesting. And one of the things she said to me, and it was funny because this kind of came about with a load of other things as well. It's kind of like a moment of synchronicity. She said, it's sometimes when, like the first time we were talking about having lost my parents, I smiled. And she was like, it's kind of difficult to understand like what you're feeling, because you kind of have this like, you smile things off, you kind of almost like laugh things off. And it's true. And I very much do that. And whilst I am quite in tune with my feelings and I can feel quite deeply, there is almost there is a performant layer where, you know and I guess, most people do this. I think we all have performant layers to an extent, like it on a call or in conversation. If somebody asks you something hard that may feel something, I'm very good at being able to smile through that thing, whatever it is, anger, frustration, whatever. I will feel the emotions in silent afterwards, and I will take the time and make the space to feel those emotions. But sometimes they get forgotten about, and if you're busy and you're kind of going from thing to thing, and you're putting on this performance, then things can get left behind. And and it really just got me kind of thinking about that, and how there are so many things that I what the word Angelina used, and I thought this was a really interesting way of looking at it, and almost something that I want to try and take forward, was this idea of what was it she said? I think it was a phrase of like the space between the notes. I can't remember who it was that talked about this. Somebody in music, but it's the space between the notes that makes the song. And as that translates into emotions, is it's kind of like I'm not allowing the space between the notes. So when something comes up, when a thought or a feeling or something gets mentioned in conversation, I'm not giving it space to just sit. I go straight into performance mode. I go straight into the character, the face, the being strong, you know without letting that emotion sit and simmer. And the interesting thing about this as well was, like I mentioned, a lot of things happened all within the space of like a week. So Angelina mentioning that, and then one of our account managers in our team, he's just joined the company recently, and he said to me, "Oh, you're great at interviews." He was like, "I couldn't tell if you loved me or hated me when we first had our call." He's like, "You're so hard to read." I was like, "Really?" Like, I found that really strange, because I always think like, you know, the way I see it, I'm super easy to read. Like, I'm very expressive, and I'm very honest. I'm very open. Like, I will be very open about things. And again, as we were unpacking this, and I've been reflecting and journaling over the past couple of weeks, is it's kind of like, I think sometimes I am so expressive, like my energy is very consistent. Again, it's performant. I am very expressive, and I am very open and honest, and I will share everything. But because of that, because I'm always sharing so much, and because I'm always very energetic and expressive, and everything I'm saying, I am hard to read. I almost become like an enigma, and even for myself sometimes, because I've been doing this for so long now. And it's almost like this kind of defense mechanism, I guess, where I've learned um to kind of just go beyond or transcend like, as soon as an emotion comes up, I will just kind of go beyond it, you know which is something really interesting. It's something that I very much want to work on, and I want to get better at feeling those emotions and allowing the space between, allowing things to settle and simmer. And I think well, I was actually watching back as well the original video that I did, which I'll link to in this one somewhere probably. The first video I did on the kind of grief diaries, and there was a lot of moments in that video when, as you can probably see if you watched it, where I was just pausing, and the emotions were coming out, and it was this real um it was just this kind of constant, like, roller coaster of emotions, of kind of remembering the happy moments, remembering the really sad and distressing things. And one of my kind of big focuses for this year is to work on integration, to integrate all of these sides of me, because the way I've described it to other people is that I very much, like, I have these very opposing sides. I think I mentioned this in another video as well, from, like, mum and dad. They were very different people, very, very different people, very different personalities, incredibly, powerful in their own right. But mum was this very gentle, loving, calm, yet extremely powerful energy. It's just like this quiet power. Dad, on the other hand, was more of the life of the party style energy, very kind of social and out there, whereas mum was the opposite of that. So I've always kind of felt this weird dichotomy and these weird different parts of me. But what I normally say is that I tend to oscillate between them. And that means, like I've said, I will have this kind of performance mode that I put on, but then I will still make space for the quietness. And I need that quietness. I'd probably say I am more introverted, because I do need that. It's kind of like they say, like, introvert and extrovert is kind of like, what do you feed, what gives you energy? And I think I get energy from being around people, from the right people. Like, no, I can't just be around anyone. If I'm around the right people, it can give me energy. But I also do need a lot of time to myself as well to recharge. And I can't really remember where I was going with that, actually. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so the different parts of me. Yeah, and in kind of, so I've oscillated between them selectively, but what I want to be able to do is, life is just this, it is like a musical piece, right? There's just constant different notes coming all the time. And you can't kind of say, well, I'm playing in the opera today, so I'm just gonna play the same note consistently and ignore all of the other ones. You have to be able to kind of move between all those different notes to make the music, and the spaces in between. So it's something that I want to get better at doing in terms of integrating that without the performance, with having those moments of pause where I can kind of be with each of these feelings. I think especially for something like, anger, which is a really interesting one, and something, Angelina's mentioned as well. I have, I used to be very angry as a teenager, very angry, very confused, um, very kind of reckless. And then it kind of early 20s went through severe anxiety. And then on the other side of that, I'm probably like the least angry. Like if someone was to describe me, they would say I'm the least angry person they've ever met. um, it's very difficult to get me annoyed about something. There is one person who will make me angry, probably one person, yeah, one person in the world, which is Jane. Um, and I think she knows how to trigger, and it is these very deep rooted kind of like childhood traumas or triggers. And she didn't do it intentionally, but with the kind of person she's this personality who can press those buttons, um, and she does. So, she is the only person who really ever sees that side of me. But otherwise, I'm just not somebody who really gets angry. Like things don't really bother me. But uh, again, thinking about this now and talking through this, it's like maybe there is anger, because I'm not like I'm actually, and this is a crazy thing. Like I'm not consciously aware of it at all. Um, and that's how kind of deep rooted sometimes these things can go. And it's funny, I've kind of been running summaries of, these sessions I've been having and stuff through AI and getting it to interpret it. And it said, had this expression where it said like, you know, it sounds like, um, it's not like you're ignoring anger or repressing it, because you do take time to feel these things, but it's almost like you've trained your nervous system to rise above, or like to transcend almost that anger and that emotion, because you have convinced yourself or told yourself anger is bad. Like people shouldn't get angry. We should all be loving, which is, again, in principle, is true. It's a good thing and it's a good belief to have. However, it can have negative side effects when you're not making space for that in the moment. And it's almost like, because I've got so effective at doing that, like I've trained my nervous system to doing that I don't feel it anymore. I don't even notice it's there. So it's, and the way it described it, which really I really resonated with me, is it's like this unmetabolized anger, right? That just sits, and it doesn't, again, it doesn't register as anger. There is just like an emotional, a kind of hum, and it's like, what is this thing? It's kind of like this residual, unmetabolized emotion that hasn't been, properly thought through or addressed. And sometimes, again, because the moment's now past, it's difficult to kind of get back into the frame and that moment, because a lot of emotions, they are momentary, right? They don't necessarily register hours on or days on. So really the best time to process it is then and there. And that doesn't, this is why all these things are a balance as well, right? Because that doesn't mean that I should just like get really angry at everyone, but what it does mean is that you can still feel that. I think, there are ways of um, feeling and being a certain emotion, pausing and being with it, but you don't have to act on it. That's a kind of different thing. And I think I've kind of bypassed the feeling step instead of bypassing the acting step, or acting out or acting on step, so to speak. So, yeah, super, super fascinating, super interesting. And I think that's kind of, you know, keeping me busy and occupied to an extent, um, which is good, because, it is one of those things as well where, um, like I think I mentioned this before, there's this whole, always this question of like, how long do I spend just sitting in sadness? Because again, I can very much feel into that sadness. There are a lot of things which I do find very sad. And, but it's kind of like, this is the weird thing, I think, when somebody is gone, when somebody's passed, what am I, and this probably isn't a very, it's not really the right way to look at it, but it kind of feels like, what am I doing? What am I achieving? What's the benefit of looking at this sad thing and being sad about it? Versus if I feel sad in the moment, I want to honor that. Like if sadness comes up naturally, if I wake up one day and I'm feeling sad, I don't want to be like, hey, screw you, sadness, I'm gonna go and do this. No, I want to honor that, and I want to sit with that, and that's what I've been trying to do. But otherwise, if everything's fine and I'm just working away and it's like, oh, maybe I should, go and be sad now. Really? Why? I don't. So that's a kind of balance I'm still trying to get right, because again, it's also the question of, even if I do that, like how often do you do it? What's the right amount? And there's just so much to that. But this is, just saying this out loud now, and that's why I kind of love doing these videos, because I can just ramble. I don't know if it's that exciting for anyone else, but it there is like another thing that and this is something I said to Angelina in one of our sessions recently as well, is about how I've realized I've kind of got to this state of like, everything in my life is about kind of optimization. And I had this moment where I was I try and get out every day, go for a walk, get in nature like every single day. But again, that in itself is like, it's optimization, it's tick box to, because I know it's healthy, I know it's good for you, you should get in nature. So it's kind of, my whole life has become this tick box of things. And what really kind of disgusted was the word, like it really did make me kind of ick and cringe, was I went into the park and I sat in a park, and I looked at my phone and I was like, okay, cool, it's 2:00, I'll do this until 20 past. And I just thought, and I put my phone back down and I was like, are you fucking serious? Like, you're like, I had nothing to do that day. Like, it was just a complete chill day. And it's like, I'm trying to time block these things for like efficiency. And okay, yeah, 20 minutes seems like a good time to sit out in nature and, get some, and I'm even like thinking about like, like how long should I get out in the sun for? When do you start to, and this is just my nature, my personality, as I'm very like, I engineer so much. And, even to the extent where I look at things like, vitamin D synthesis and how long does that take in a certain UV index. It's crazy. Let's not even go there. That's for a whole nother video. But this is my point. And when I saw that, just reflecting on myself, I was like, oh God, this is like, because there was a very, an important part to me, and something I very fundamentally believe in, is like, play should be at the root of everything. Like it's such an important value that I have, just this light touch, this playfulness. Don't take anything too seriously, because we're all going to fucking die. Like, life should be about playing and enjoying and experimenting and just living like a kid. I really believe that. So again, this is this kind of contradiction and contradictory side where, it's almost like my inner child saw that. I was kind of like, ugh. And then that kind of revealed this whole pattern of, one of the things I mentioned in my dad's eulogy was about how, he was my hero growing up. I admired him. He was this kind of, briefcase and suit banker going into the city. He was like the pinnacle of a man to me. That was my kind of role model. And I modeled myself on that. And, the career and the business and like all of this. So, and I think that's probably where that kind of more masculine energy, that optimization comes from. But then another very important part to me, and this I think my dad had a very playful energy as well. Actually, both my mum and dad did, which is probably why it's so important to me. But I think the other part to me is the playfulness, and it's kind of like there is, something Angelina pointed out is that there may be this kind of tension between that. The ick is almost like that kind of inner child me, or that playful side of me, being disgusted at what this other side is doing, and I think there's a reconciliation needed there. Um, because again, this is something I really want to focus on more this year as well, is to be able to make more time for just play instead of having to optimize everything. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything for this video, really, in terms of like updates. We'll see how the journey unfolds over the coming weeks.